Hey, how's it going? Wanted to do another quick review here for Hades. This is a game I recently played on PC, and I think it's on Switch as well. And yeah, it's a great game. It's by Supergiant. Traditionally, those games have not resonated with me as much, but I found this one much faster than their predecessors, Bastion and Transistor. I thought that this game was much closer to the kind of game that I'd be interested in playing. It was fast-paced, and it was a lot of fun for the time I shared with it. And just in general, this company is a great company to be present in the space. As you probably know, I invited the audio director, Darren Korb, to be a presenter when I was teaching at Stanford. So he's great. I love to see the kind of work he's doing. And there's a lot to talk about with this game. It's a pretty short game. It's a roguelike, which means you're going to be playing the same levels over and over again, which is sort of its own genre. It's the nature of the game. And I think it's a very smart kind of game for a small studio to be making. This is a pretty small production, right? This is a team of, the core team was about 18 or 15 people. So it's a pretty small production team. And, obviously the constraint there is just on content. How much can we create and how are we going to make that last? And this team is pretty technical when it comes to, I think, fine-tuning some of... I would say where they shine really is actually maybe not in the technical side, but now that I'm thinking about it, it's really the art and the music stylings. I think that's where, and it's even the narrative to some degree. And so I think that's really where this game shines as well. So the game has great characters and environments here. Maybe I could play the trailer a bit, and we could just see some of that in the background hanging out. Well, actually, this is like an animated trailer, but this is actual gameplay. It's a lot of fun. I played the game for, my log time is 4.5 hours, and I would say that I, at this time, probably would not have an interest in playing the game anymore. I did maybe 5 or 6 runs, and I got up to this penultimate boss, which is Theseus and the Minotaur, and so I enjoyed that. I think your play length is certainly going to vary by your experience level with this kind of game and just skill level with video games, but I saw on How Long to Beat that it was quoted on roughly 15 hours. That seemed a little bit high to me. I do feel that the game is going to get a little repetitive and boring by that point. I would clock it at maybe, if I was really excited about this game, I could see pushing to 10 hours. Though I did see somebody did an ending where apparently it took 1,600 hours to get there, which I think is certainly a little bit ridiculous. So I don't think this game has 1,600 hours worth of content. I think it's got maybe about 10 hours for me personally. And there was some elements that, so I was able to get pretty far in my runs. I think a little bit further than the game expected, just based on how I saw them reacting to my stuff. And there was some narrative progression that came up just when I was logging in to do sort of a last pass to prepare for this review. And there was a cutscene where there was a little bit of long-term story progression where the main character gets to learn a little bit more about their backstory, which was totally separate from the standard dungeon crawl roguelike experience. So that was really cool, like this weird little cutscene that popped up, and I'm curious where that occurred in other people's playthroughs. But there is a semblance of a persistent story that happens over the long haul as you're playing and learning more about this character. And I really want to dive into that because this game has some really solid screenshots. Almost at any time you could pause this game, take a screenshot, and it's just a beautiful image. And I think Supergiant has really refined their ability to do that. Certainly on Transistor, there was some awesome, beautiful graphics there. But here, I think they've just taken it to the next level because this game looks gorgeous and it sounds really great too. Darren and the team have recruited just amazing sounds and music. It's a beautiful score. And then they also have a really talented team of voice acting here, including this guy, Logan Cunningham, which did like half the cast, which is insane. Darren, we even have an appearance by him where he plays Zagreus and Skelly, and that was cool. But I really do think the show was stolen by this woman, Avalon Penrose, who played Megara. Just a really perfect blend in her performance of sexy and also angry, and it certainly reminded me of the many powerful women I've pissed off in my history. So I thought that was just a beautiful performance as well. So I think that the audio, The visuals are just incredible. The hub world in particular was really quite beautiful. Just an environment with all these different characters sort of milling about and interacting with each other. You go out, you go on this adventure, and then you come back and you see that things have changed and people are chatting with each other. There's even some cosmetic progression where you can, pimp out your room and get some cool new bed and stuff like that. And I think that's all very fun as well. Okay, so with respect to design, again, very smart for roguelike, similar to Subset Games, which made Into the Breach following FTL. These guys are looking into sort of the roguelike experience, and I think that's great, because if somebody can get 33 or even 91 hours out of this game, I think that's incredible for the amount of people who worked on it. And yeah, I mean, I think it's stretching it a little bit, I think, but you could definitely get probably like 10 solid hours out of this thing. Controls. Okay, so the controls were piss poor on this game. Really bad. I have to say, the original controller setup was an absolute mess, and I spent probably the first half hour fixing it. So just for reference, this is what the original controls look like. So they had the dash and the attack on the X and the A, which you can imagine is a mess, because that's all on the thumb, basically. This is how you get carpal tunnel, kids, where you are basically slapping between the X and the A for each of the dashes and attacks, and it really was preventing me from getting into a flow state for the gameplay. And then I took a really hard look at it, and I started experimenting a bit, and I found this control schema where we have the attack and the dash on the triggers, which makes a lot more sense ergonomically, and some of these other things with the cast on the right hand. That way, if you can imagine, in typing, you may have heard this, right? You have your keyboard here, right? And you've got your, again, we're gonna go on a rant here, but in typing, you've got your keyboard and you've got your fingers on what they call home row, so that whenever you need to type something, you can quickly transition your fingers to these different sections. However, I think the ergonomic lesson there was kind of lost on this design team, because when you are doing the controller setup here, what is home position for you in this thing, right? Home position is probably like this, with your fingers on the controllers here, with your fingers on the triggers. And so I think in 99% of case, you shouldn't need to move from that, right? But this control setup was pretty bad, and it seriously needed revision. I think if controls was a category in itself, this would be 2 out of 5, certainly below average. I haven't seen sort of this faux pas since Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice had a very poor control setup out of the gate, as did the God of War reboot, which was pretty bad. And I remember, and I worked on that team, and when I met with the designer there, they were like, well, it's just kind of the standard that PlayStation has done. They use this button for this action, even if the ergonomics don't make sense. And I think probably a similar thing happened here, where we're just sort of going with the status quo on what we would expect. Maybe A is supposed to be jump and dash traditionally. But X and B for cast and attack, it's just, it did not make any sense. I was very unhappy with the control setup for this game. The other thing that I think was a bit of an issue was that when I was playing the game, I would find that some of my attacks, so I would be able to really quickly move, dash and punch, and dash and punch, and dash and punch, because I'm just literally sort of slapping the controllers and jumping around the level. Nobody could really touch me at that point. I'm kicking ass. However, some of the abilities, particularly the one where you throw the diamond, which is called a cast, and also this one where you charge up some stuff, like you charge up the bow and you charge up the shield, that just had a really negative impact on my play. So I would say that it broke my flow state in such a way that I couldn't dodge and bob and weave and throw a grenade and punch and kill like this. I think there's something really beautiful when you look at some of the games that have done this really well. I mean, I don't think there's a game that has combat flow better than probably the new Doom. The Doom reboot, or even going back a little bit, maybe like a Halo 3, where you have very easily the ability to throw the grenade and then shoot and then punch and then jump, and it's a very fluid combat, where you're throwing the grenade and there is some sort of there's a temporal difference there, where the grenade is going to be thrown, then it's going to take a second, and then it's going to explode, but the input is immediate. You throw the grenade and now you're done. And so all of the logic, you don't have to stop your game experience. Instead, you can just think quickly, okay, where's this grenade going to be at the time of explosion, 2 seconds from now? And then I can kind of design my combat approach based on that. Whereas with this game, you have to zoom out, draw the bow, or with the shield, charge up the shield, and then go in for maybe like, I mean, with most of the attacks, it's like you're in there for like a third of a second, a half of a second. With that shield bash, you might be charging it up for a full second, which seems pretty fast, but when you're in a flow state and you're moving at like, 300 milliseconds for each decision, it's a huge dampener on the experience. And I just felt like it was really clunky because of that. If it had been designed in such a way like the Halo grenade or like Doom, where you're throwing something and then there's a bit of a time delay post post user action, then I think that would have been much more forgivable. But that wasn't the case here, and I think it felt a little bit clunky because of that for me. The tutorialization was pretty weak. I was pretty disappointed with the tutorialization. Again, it's a roguelike, so there is some expectation of mystery, and I think that's the pleasure for a lot of folks, where it's like over many iterations and playing this game for who knows how many hours, you're going to figure out what each little thing means. But even for me, on my 4 hours in, I'm already on the second to last boss. I feel that there's some items I still don't even understand, like what some icons mean. Like, I understand there's some doors, and what's really cool, which I haven't seen as much before, maybe in Into the Breach a little bit, which you could choose which room you're going to go into, which when you're going to break into, and then, they might have a different reward associated with it, which is kind of fun. However, and also Slay the Spire, I'll mention that one as well. But I think that what kind of sucked for me about that was I just didn't really understand like what I was wagering, like what did one symbol mean versus the other. There's a little bag with a skull on it, still don't understand what that means. Again, for your cast ability, you throw this diamond and then it can be attached to an enemy, and I didn't really understand that. Like, if I didn't fully comprehend, am I receiving a damage buff when I'm attacking the guy who has the pendant on him when he's currently holding my diamond? I thought it would be cool if I could sap some health if I killed an enemy who had a diamond in them. I thought that could have been a fun experience. So I was maybe that is explored, but I didn't experience that. I will say though that even though the tutorialization was a little bit boring or disappointing, I felt that there were some really cool items that I had an enjoyment discovering. Again, I felt that so there's these like tokens that you can get from different people if you give them gifts of like this little honey pack. And if you receive these tokens, like some of them are pretty cool. Some of them are more powerful than others, like the Lucky Tooth is pretty dope. But I would say that it was kind of fun to experiment and see them. But once I found one that I thought was way better than the others, I just always went with that one. So maybe it would have been nice if they were on cooldown, or if I had to, I don't know, if there's some trade-offs associated with doing one versus the other, because I felt like one was always clearly better than other ones, in my opinion. And then playing with the different weapons was really fun too. I found, each playthrough I was trying to grab a new weapon and experience what that would feel like. So I played at least once with each one of them, and I had a really good experience there. I thought the weapons were great. In particular, there was this one weapon where I received a power-up, which is that your health is 20%, but every time you do an attack, you leech health. And so you get a little blood suck every time you go attack some enemies. And that was incredible. I mean, I would, maybe on my first 3 or 4 playthroughs, I had been getting up around to the woman, Megara. However, once I had that ability, I was able to progress straight to the second boss, because that ability was just so powerful for me, because at that point I was in a flow state and I could easily move between the enemies and quickly sap them for health if I was getting hit hard. So I was able to do that until I got, of course, to the boss battle where the guy has the shield and I couldn't suck his health. So I thought that weapon was really cool, and I just sort of like, I left that playthrough and I was like, oh man, like that would be awesome to play with that weapon again. So that felt kind of awesome, like to feel like I aspire to have that same circumstance happen, which I think is really in the spirit of a roguelike. And it reminds me a little bit of a roguelike I played recently, the one by Double Fine with Lee Petty on creative direction there, or I think just game direction in general. So that one was pretty fun, where you have a different balance there. So overall, I would say the design was probably a 2.5 to 3. The music and art and voiceover were a solid 5 out of 5. Couldn't have been better. Incredible, really beautiful work. And then the story, I would say, was about a 4 out of 5 based on what I've seen and the time I played. I would say overall this game is a 3.5 to 4, so I'll probably give that a 4, rounding up. And I did see online the critics are a little bit closer to a 9 out of 10. I think that's a little bit higher. This game probably wouldn't be on my top 3 list for roguelikes, but it would probably be on my top 5 list because I do think it is really beautiful. And if the aesthetics are an important aspect of the experience for you, then I would highly recommend checking out this game. However, at this point, I would say overall it is probably not going to be a recommendation for me. I think if you're into roguelikes, this is a good game for you. But if you're not if you haven't tried roguelikes yet, I think there's a few other ones that might be a better experience and that I think provide a better overall experience. But Hades is a great game nonetheless, and I certainly enjoyed my time playing it. Thanks.